I'm Fred Satilli, and this is the recording of the podcast for episode 10 for the Voters Union of Accountability Nation. And this will probably be one of my worst recordings because frankly, I'm angry. I made a short version of this yesterday for people who don't want to hear me go on and on and on. And when this subject was brought to my attention, the subject of school choice, I did some research on it, and the more research I did, the angrier I got. And I contained myself yesterday, but I did more research today. And anyway, it's gonna be a lot of reading. The podcast, they don't know that I'm reading, but you here on YouTube see that I do. And I don't like to read. I like to speak extemporaneously. I like to shoot from the hip. Like when I'm on stage at a comedy club, I go up there and I have a basic idea of what I'm going to talk about, and I tell a bunch of jokes, and it works out just fine. But here there's so many facts and so many figures and so many subjects and sub-subjects and everything else that I wanted to start this out in a very philosophical way, and talk about our posterity, because that's what we're talking about here. But there's way too many nuts and bolts. So anyway, when our great nation was first formed, we began to define ourselves. As with any organization, we created a preliminary mission statement so the gist of our intentions would be spelled out in an introductory way. Our mission statement was this: we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common, each man's defense, promote the general welfare, we want everybody to do well, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States. There's a lot in that, and what we're talking about now is the posterity. The mission statement officially states that we intend to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. It's in the first sentence. So what is our posterity? Well, the dictionary definition is defined as those who come after us, specifically our children and grandchildren. There should also be an acknowledgement of the fact that the posterity in question is ours. The citizens, the people who are the we the people. It's our posterity, not, some organization's posterity. It's pretty clear. My children are my posterity. That can't be taken away. Ensuring domestic tranquility guarantees that my children will not be taken or alienated from me. They can't be. They're my posterity. It's ensured in the first sentence, right? It's so important that it's said right away. Anyway, so how do we promote our children's general welfare? Well, there's basically three ways. We keep the security of the nuclear family intact so that they know that they have a family where they belong, who they are. They have a place to sleep at night that's secure. That's what the family provides. They don't ever have to worry about something like that. The second thing is we provide a healthy environment, both nutritionally and psychologically, both equally important. And the third thing is and my own parents were very good about this with me, we educate them to be self-reliant, not dependent, right? So what we're going to talk about here is number 3, education. I'd like to talk about all three because as a nation, we're failing all three. But we're going to stay on education. Okay, so now I'm going to start giving some citations up front so that nobody questions where I got my information, because I hate that. And in Governor Gavin Newsom's latest budget, he projects $101.8 billion in total spending, And I got that piece of information from the Los Angeles Times. Now, I don't consider the Los Angeles Times a credible news source, but probably most of you do. I don't know why you do, but you do. Anyway, because God knows they've lied and lied and lied and misrepresented, but that's a story, that's another story, okay? Now, according to the California Department of Education, the CDE, we have 6,186,278 students. Okay? So if you take 101.8 billion and you divide by 6,186,178 students, you come up with an amount of 16,456 or 55 dollars per student. It's arithmetic. I'm not making these numbers up. Okay, so we're going to use 16,455, 16.5. That's what we spend per student, okay, in California. Now, according to the privateschoolreview.com, private school tuition is $14,542 per year in 2020. Okay? Some private schools, one particular one is as low as $1,011, but that's obviously very, very low. It's a parochial school, and obviously some are more. Okay, but the average is $14,500, so we're going with that. Okay, now that's the cost, but what about quality? What about quality? All right, and boy, I'm going to talk about this later. We have something called the NAEP, which is the National Assessment of Educational Progress. The percentage of students at or above the National Proficiency Standard here in California, only 34% are at level or better in math. Only 1/3. Reading, 32%. Only 32% of our public school students can read at the national level. Then it gets worse. So those are basically a third, right? Science, 24%. Only 1/4 of our students meet the national standard in science. And 23% for writing. Only 23%, not even 1/4 of the people in public school, and they do this test in the 4th grade and the 8th grade. Just want to mention that. Only 23% are meeting the national standard. It's a disaster. These grade level standards are achievable goals. Somebody is reaching them. To have an average, somebody's got to do better than average, right? You know, somebody's reaching them, but it sure as hell isn't the California public school students. Okay, no matter how you calculate it, that's bad. We're the accountability nation, right? Voters Union of Accountability Nation. You think we don't want accountability for this? You bet we do. Okay, California used to be among the finest schools. What happened? Somebody's to blame. It's not the plumbers, it's not the carpenters, right? It's not the automobile mechanics. People in education made really bad, or politics, made really bad decisions as to how we educate our children. That's why they're not doing well. Okay, and the point is that at the highest level is we are failing our posterity. The unions and the Democrat Party have controlled California demonstratively since World War II. It's obvious that these powers that be do not have the best interest of children at heart. And man, that statement right there, there's 100 podcasts, from the Department of Child Services, and there's the Title V, Social Security Act, Title V stuff. It's a whole nother story, but we're really hurting them. Okay, so, the cliche is competition breeds excellence. The government, in collusion with the unions, have done everything they can do to stifle competition. Didn't they want excellence? They did it to control the tax money they collect in the name of education, but not really for education. We in California are the richest state. It stands to reason we should have the best schools. We used to be great. Now we're not. Now it's time for accountability of those funds. It's time for the free market to create the kind of competition that will self-sanitize our schools and their funding waste and fraud. The good news is a new plan will expand opportunity and won't cost the taxpayers a dime. My alter ego said it real well in the kitchen, so we're going to cut to that. Hi, I'm Fred Satilli. I want to speak with you for a moment about school choice. For those of you who care about our children and the posterity of our nation, we have a very forward-thinking, innovative idea that will be perfect for those people who do care. Our public schools here in California are among the worst in the nation. There should be alternatives. We have private, parochial, and charter schools that are better. But there are government impediments that prevent us from sending our children to them. Why? We spend $16,544 a year per student here in California on public education. The average cost for a charter school, a private school, or a parochial school is $14,542. If we sent our children to the average private school, it would save the taxpayers and everybody in general $1,913 a year. The proposal is simple. Make these schools available. Let the parents have a choice. Now, the method to do this is very simple. We take the $16,500 per year that is fully budgeted for these students, and we put it into an individual education trust account for each person. The cost of the private school would be paid directly out of that account. On average, we would put $1,900 a year into the trust account that would develop and grow from K through 12 over 13 years to have a principal of $25,000 alone plus interest. Now, I don't know what the interest is on $1,900, but if you compound that for 13 years and then add another 19 and compound it for 12 years and another 19, it's going to be a lot. So the trust account will have a lot of money in it, and that money will be used for secondary school. I don't know how $25,000 plus a lot sounds to you to pay for a college education, or to me, even better yet, it would fully fund a trade school education. Just imagine, you finish high school, you go to trade school, you come out in only 2 years working in a trade, making money with no debt whatsoever. How does that sound like for taking care of your children? It sounds pretty great to me. You know, the best part is the total budget for this is already there. And the important thing to remember here is that private schools are accountable to the parents. If they don't perform, they're out. Public schools are not. We're stuck with them if they perform or if they don't, and they're failing a lot of our kids. You know, so as a parent, which one would you prefer? I mean, that's what I thought, right? And the weird, sad part of this is that politicians don't seem to want to help us. They don't propose this or promote it, and we're going to have to do it ourselves. We're going to have to either create a ballot initiative or some other vehicle to get this on the ballot so we can vote for it and just bypass them, bypass these politicians, and do what's right for our kids. So if you see the wisdom in this, if you make a large financial contribution, we need a lot of money. You know, the ivory tower doesn't allow you to bypass them easily, so We need a large financial contribution, continuous, every month. It would be good to set it up that way. And even better yet, if you can volunteer your time and effort to gather the signatures that we would need, because in Sacramento, they love to disqualify signatures of registered voters, right? So they're going to be doing a lot of that, fighting back, big pushback for this. To me, a no-brainer, great idea. So, all parents want what's best for their children. And to me, it's pretty obvious that school choice is the best choice. Thank you. Well, I'm proud of that. I did that yesterday when I was a little more calm. Now I feel like, if you remember the wide world of sports, back to live action with Chris Economaki. And what we're going to talk about now is politicians and teachers. And any politician that's not on board with this doesn't care about you. Okay? Why would politicians resist the idea of school choice? They do it because it would slow the money being redirected from school funding, including bond issues, from education to other not educational related locations. And this bond issue thing, they continuously have a For the Children bond issue, and everybody falls for it because who the hell wouldn't want to have better schools and stuff, but the money's always pilfered, Well, not always entirely pilfered, but believe me, a lot of it's redirected to things that if you knew what was going on, you would never vote for that. Any politician that's not on board with this needs to be voted out of office. It's a simple question. You say, are you for school choice? They say, well, actually, no, they're out. And this is a nonprofit. I'm equal opportunity. When I first heard about all this, I started to research. I started to get a little bit mad. They said, there's got to be another side of this. And I went on a website that had 10 reasons to resist school choice, And one of the 10 reasons, believe it or not, was some people don't like school choice. I'm like, who wrote this? Like a fourth grader that, had their 23% writing skill? Like, some people don't like school choice. Well, some people do, okay? There's a heavy counter argument right there. Can't believe it was on the list. Another one was, how do we ensure the quality of these schools? The schools we have are bad. That's why we're bringing this up. You're starting from a position. What are you, some kind of hypocrite? Anyway, we got to get rid of them. Now, the teachers, boy, I'm not going to make any friends with this. I'll tell you that. I think the thing that most people think is that teachers are underpaid. And this is something that you hear all the time. It's a really big cliche. I mean, if you mention teachers, it's not going to be a minute before somebody goes, oh, they're just, those poor teachers are all underpaid. Well, I'll tell you what. If we put these teachers on commission, they'd all starve. We're 2/3 to 3/4 of our students don't meet the standard, right? Can you imagine if 3/4 of the houses carpenters built fell down, or if your internet only worked 2/3 of the time, or if your plumbing broke 2/3 of the time, or your electric failed 3/4 of the time? I mean, these tradesmen are wonderful people. They keep all this stuff going. You turn that tap on, that water comes out all the time. And if it's not going to come out, they tell you why, and they fix it right away. These teachers have no accountability, and some of them are... I hate saying these words out of my mouth because I know how great some of them are, how dedicated they are. But I'm going to cut away the tinsel for a minute here. First of all, these teachers have to play ball with all this because they have teaching credentials, and without them, they can't do their job. And that's another subject yet for another podcast, because all this licensing is all used for manipulation, and I hate that. But the problem is we have an increasingly intellectual society. The jobs are not getting easier. You need more, we used to have manufacturing jobs where a large percentage of the population can be just put on an auto assembly line, or it could be a farm picker, and That was great for people that only had that capacity, or people that needed to start somewhere or something. But now most harvesting is mechanized, and most auto construction is mechanized, and they're mechanized by complicated robots with incredible computer programs. And we need to educate our children at a very, very high level. The standard has to be high. And I'm going way off script 100 times over, but India has a population 4 times the size of us. And as their nutrition improves, for every person we have with a high IQ, they're going to have 4. And they're hungry, and they're coming, man. And anyway, to move a child into this high-tech world without high-tech training, you can't have schools in a language that you don't speak. This is another gigantic thing that I want to really get through here, and that if you want to do well in this world, English is the language of success. English is the international language of banking. They speak it all over the place. The Chinese can never be the language. The keyboard, the figures are too hard, the reading and writing. English is a really clean, succinct language. There's a few weird, callbacks to the Gaelic stuff or whatever it may be. But other than that, the whole world, if they want to be successful in anything, science and technology and finance and all that kind of stuff, it's all done in English. These teachers who allowed education to be done in other languages are not doing a service to their students. It should really be that all classes are taught in English, this whole bilingual thing or other stuff, or as a second language. None of this should have been allowed to take place. And they did it over the last 50 years, and there's giant historic reasons why and everything, but it was a bad idea then, and it's resulted in real failure now. We have overpopulated classes with people who can't possibly do the work. We literally have students at the high school level who it's their first year speaking English. Now, how are they going to do algebra and advanced reading and writing and this kind of thing if they can't speak the language that the teachers speak in the country where they've come? That their potential, they have to be really, really brilliant people to surmount that and move forward. And I think the lack of failure to acknowledge that is conspiratorial on the part of the teachers. These teachers over the last 30 years should have demanded monolingual school, but they didn't, for fear of losing their teaching licenses or whatever. But now I went on a subject called Capital Research Center, and I found out about rubber rooms. And New York alone pays $150 million to teachers who aren't even in the classroom. I find that hard to understand. I never knew a tradesman to be paid to not show up at work, but they do. The average rubber room idler, according to the article at that, capitalresearch.com, the average rubber room idler receives $95,000 a year, approximately $10,000 more than the average teacher. Okay? Some even get 6-figure salaries in the rubber room. In Los Angeles, they don't even have to report to a rubber room. They just send them home, but the people still collect their salary. The average teacher's salary in LA is $65,000 with a very full benefit package, and you all know that's true. The teacher works 180 days per year. The average, we'll say 5-day-a-week worker, if you work 5 days a week, you're going to work 260 days a year as opposed to 180 days. That's 80 days off with pay for a teacher over somebody who works a 5-day, 8-hour, 40-hour work week. Okay? That's the teachers at that rate are making $361 a day. Does that sound underpaid to you? 361 divided by 8 hours is $45 an hour. Does that sound underpaid to you? $45 an hour. You get paid for 40 days off compared to a regular worker, a typical office worker, right? And you have the incredible benefit package that can never be taken away. It's protected by CalPERS and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how ambitious you are, but I only wish that I had those circumstances in my own life. Okay? I don't understand why there's not an uprising by teachers to eliminate students that aren't qualified to be in their class. It's a conspiracy. It's a union conspiracy, and the conspiracy is something that really we truly all know, but we're just not allowed to say. No one wants this, yet no teacher stands up. There's not even a maverick faction or anything. So look, to school teachers, I want to say to you, school choice is not a threat. We still have the same number of students. We will still need the same number of good teachers. In fact, we will need more teachers because private schools have smaller class sizes. So if you're a teacher, get on board with school choice. We can do better. It's the way to do it. And we're not even going to talk about college here. That's a real disaster. Educating our national enemies is tantamount to nothing more than treason. And the colleges are only too happy to do this for foreign money. They should know better. They are aware of their treason. It's easy to understand. They're smart enough, to understand that, but they don't care. They're in it for the money. And we're also not going to talk about indoctrination that's done in schools here. That's a whole nother mess. Just strictly academically, this whole education system is third rate. And you know it. The beginning of the answer is school choice. Thank you.